My stepmother gave me an ultimatum. At my father's 60th birthday, in front of 26 relatives, pay $76,000 for my stepbrother's MBA, or you're no longer family. When my father said everyone had discussed it, they never expected me to leave that night. My stepmother tapped her wine glass at 8:03 p.m. on a Friday in May, and 26 relatives watched me stop chewing mid-bite. It wasn't the volume. A fork against crystal at a birthday dinner doesn't carry much sound on its own. It's a small, calculated sound. The sound of someone who has spent 15 years managing family gatherings and knows precisely how to make a room turn toward her without raising her voice. I stopped chewing because of what came next. Renee, my stepmother Carol, set her glass down and looked at me with the specific, composed certainty she reserves for things she's already decided and is simply informing the room about. Your father and I have talked this through with everyone. She nodded toward the side table where a manila folder sat beside the cake, conspicuously placed, the kind of prop you set out when you want someone to notice it before you mention it. Tyler's business school acceptance. Wharton's executive MBA program. Your contribution will be $76,000. I laughed. A real one. The short, unplanned kind that comes out before you've decided whether laughing is the right response. The kind your body produces when something arrives so far outside any reasonable expectation that sound is the only thing available. Nobody else laughed. 26 people at a birthday dinner. Aunts, uncles, my father's golf friends, neighbors who'd known the family for 20 years, all looking at me with the settled patience of an audience that had been prepared in advance. My father stood. He stood the way he stands when he wants physical posture to do work his words alone can't, slowly, with his hand briefly on the table, the way you stand when you're about to deliver something you consider final. He looked around the table and then at me with the expression of a man who has already decided how this conversation ends. Everyone here agrees, he said. Tyler's worked hard. This is the kind of thing family does for each other. Across the table, my stepbrother Tyler had his eyes down on his plate, jaw tight, performing the specific reluctance of someone who has been coached to look uncomfortable about a windfall he has been quietly engineering for months. Carol's daughter from her first marriage, my stepsister Brianna, was filming the moment on her phone. Angled, I noticed, more toward capturing the table's reaction than toward me. Carol leaned in, dropping her voice to the register she uses when she wants something to sound private while making sure the whole table can still hear every word. Pay for Tyler's MBA, she said, or you're no longer considered part of this family. 26 people at a 60th birthday dinner. A sheet cake from the good bakery downtown. String lights my aunt had put up in the backyard that afternoon. The smell of someone's cigar drifting in from the patio. Then my father leaned toward me just slightly and said the sentence that reorganized everything I thought I understood about the last 17 years. Not for the table, just for me. After everything we did, letting you stay with us after your mother passed, he said, this is the least you could do. Letting you stay. Not raising me, not loving me, not choosing me, letting you stay. I had heard versions of that phrase for 17 years, never quite that explicit, always submerged just beneath the surface of certain conversations, and I had always told myself I was misreading things, that families say careless things when they're stressed, that the phrase didn't carry the weight it seemed to carry. In that moment, with 26 people watching and cake half served and Tyler still staring at his plate, I understood I had not been misreading anything. I had been reading it exactly right. I had simply never let myself act on it. I set my napkin on the table. I need to step out, I said. My father's hand closed around my forearm. You walk out on my birthday. Don't bother calling. I looked at his hand on my arm, at my father's hand on my arm, at his 60th birthday. I won't be calling, I said, and I left. I need to take you back, because letting you stay is a sentence with a 17-year history, and none of what follows makes sense without it. My name is Renee Castellano. I am 29 years old. I work as a paralegal at a mid-sized litigation firm in Denver, a job I took partly because the work interested me, and partly I understand now, because I had spent my whole adolescence absorbing the specific vocabulary of who owes what to whom, and a profession built on documenting exactly that felt, in some unconscious way, inevitable. My mother died when I was 12. Ovarian cancer, fast and brutal. 11 months from diagnosis to the funeral. My father, Daniel Castellano, remarried 2 years later. Carol, a woman with 2 children of her own from a previous marriage. Tyler, who was 13 at the time. And Brianna, who was 10. I want to be fair. I want to be precise. Carol was not a cartoon villain stepmother. There were real moments of warmth in the early years. She helped me pick out a dress for my 8th grade dance. She came to my college visits. She occasionally said things that suggested she was trying, in whatever limited way she understood trying. But there was also, from the very beginning, an asymmetry that never closed. It showed up in small ways at first. Tyler's soccer tournaments were family events. My academic awards were acknowledged with a quick, "That's great, honey," before the conversation moved elsewhere. Brianna's dance recitals got a reserved row of seats. My college graduation, my father missed entirely because of a work thing that turned out, I learned much later from my aunt, to be Tyler's bachelor party 4 states away. I had absorbed the lesson early. In this house, I was a guest who had been allowed to extend her stay, and guests don't make demands. I spent 17 years trying trying to be a guest worth keeping. I babysat Brianna for free through high school. I tutored Tyler in math for 2 years without being asked to be paid because asking felt like presenting an invoice to people who had, as far as I could tell, never fully decided I belonged there in the first place. My maternal grandmother, Rosalind Esposito, had been the one fixed point of unconditional certainty in those 17 years. She lived 40 minutes away, in the same house she and my grandfather had bought in 1974, and she looked at me every single time I saw her from the week of my mother's funeral onward, like someone who had decided, independently and permanently, that I mattered completely. She died when I was 26, 80 years old, heart failure, peaceful, in her own bed. 3 years before that, when I turned 23, she had handed me a small fireproof document box. "Don't open this unless you need to," she said. "You'll know." I kept it in my closet for 6 years. I went home that night, after my father's birthday, and opened it. Inside the box were 3 things. The first was a folder of statements for a custodial investment account she had opened in my name the year I turned 13, the year my mother died, which I noted and sat with for a long moment before reading further. 13 years of contributions, modest and irregular, the pattern of someone adding what she could when she remembered to. The account had peaked the year I turned 24, at $61,400, then withdrawals. Beside one, in my grandmother's careful handwriting in the margin, "Tyler's car," Daniel asked. I said no, he did it anyway. Beside another, Brianna's wedding contribution. Beside another, Tyler, loan for the condo down payment. Beside a fourth, not sure. Ask Daniel directly next visit. 9 withdrawals over 4 years, totaling just under $53,000, leaving the account, as of the final statement, with $8,200. I had wondered vaguely at 24 why the account my grandmother had once mentioned casually seemed smaller than I'd expected when she brought it up again near the end of her life. She had told me gently that markets had been unkind. I had believed her because questioning my grandmother felt unthinkable, and because I did not yet understand that someone besides her could have had access to that account at all. The second item was a photograph of a property record, a small rental duplex in a neighborhood near downtown Denver that had appreciated significantly over the past decade, titled in my grandmother's name, with a sticky note in her handwriting still attached, "For Renee. She'll know what to do with it." I recognized the address vaguely. I had visited it once as a child, before it was rented out, when my grandmother still talked about fixing it up for the future. My father had told me, 18 months earlier, that the duplex had been sold to cover my grandmother's final medical and care expenses. A sad necessity. These things happen. The third item was a note, folded once, my name on the front in her handwriting. The deliberate, slightly old-fashioned script of a woman who understood that some things need to look intentional when they're finally found. I unfolded it. "Renee, if you're reading this, something happened that I tried to prevent. The investment account was always yours. The duplex on Forest Street is yours. I structured both as carefully as I knew how to keep them safe. If they weren't safe, someone made decisions I never approved of. Get yourself a sharp attorney. Move slowly. Move with proof. Don't let anyone turn the years you spent being patient into a debt they think you owe them. I loved you completely, from the very first day. I always saw exactly who you were. Grandma Roz." I sat on my kitchen floor at nearly midnight with the note in my hand, and I didn't cry. I want to be precise about that. Nothing in me was being suppressed. There simply wasn't anything that needed to surface as tears in that particular moment. What I felt was clarifying. The cold, specific clarity of someone who has just been handed a key to a door she didn't know existed. I photographed every document. I went to bed. At 6:50 the next morning, I started looking for an attorney. Diane Okafor has practiced estate and probate law in Denver for 19 years. She'd been recommended to me by a senior paralegal at my firm who described her as the most thorough person I have ever watched cross-examine a financial record. Diane charges $410 an hour and only takes cases she believes she can win. She took mine before I'd finished laying out the documents. I sat across from her desk the morning after my father's birthday and walked her through everything: the statements, the deed photograph, the note, in the order I'd organized them the night before. She read through it with the focused attention of someone absorbing information and constructing legal strategy simultaneously. When she finished, she looked up. "Who handled your grandmother's estate?" she said. "My father," I said. "He was the executor. She didn't trust Tyler or Brianna with it, and Carol wasn't blood, so it went to him." Diane's pen stopped. "Was there a formal will?" "My father told me it was simple, that the duplex had been sold to cover her care costs. But you have a deed photograph, showing it in her name, with a note indicating she intended it for me. And the account statements? Annotated by her, showing withdrawals I never authorized or knew about." She picked her pen back up. "How long ago did she pass?" 3 years. "And your stepbrother's MBA? Do you know how the family is currently planning to fund the remainder beyond what they're asking from you?" I thought about that for a moment. "I don't know. I assumed savings." "I'd like you to find out," Diane said. "Specifically, I want to know whether your name has been used anywhere in connection with that tuition. Any deposit, any loan application, any communication with the school's financial office." I looked at her. "Why would my name be on anything? I never agreed to pay for this." "That Diane said, is exactly what I want confirmed. I started with Wharton's Executive Program Financial Aid Office. I called from my car, identified myself, and asked carefully whether there was any record connected to Tyler Castellanos' enrollment that referenced my name. There was. A financial aid coordinator, after some hesitation about what she could share, confirmed that the family's submitted financing plan listed a family contribution of $76,000, confirmed by sibling Renee Castellano, with a notation that documentation was in process. My name, not my signature, my name, submitted as confirmed. When I called my father's bank to ask, under a pretext I'm not proud of but which Diane had advised me to use, whether any account in my name had been referenced on a recent loan application, the representative couldn't confirm details but did say, carefully, there's a flagged co-applicant reference that hasn't been finalized. I sat in my car in a parking garage and thought about 17 years, about being a guest who'd overstayed an invitation no one had ever fully extended, about 26 people watching my father stand up like a man delivering a verdict. At 11:20 that night, my phone lit up. Tyler, Grandma left you that duplex anyway, so it's not like you don't have money. We're family. This is what family does for each other. I read it twice, forwarded it to Diane. Her reply came within 10 minutes. Don't respond. Don't contact anyone in the family tonight. We'll talk first thing tomorrow. I set my phone face down. Grandma left you that duplex anyway. My father had told Tyler about the duplex, which meant he knew about it, which meant he had known it was mine when he allegedly sold it, or claimed to have sold it, after her death. I had already suspected this. The note had made it close to certain, but suspecting it abstractly and having my stepbrother confirm it in a text message at 11:20 at night are two different experiences. I lay there processing the gap between them for the better part of an hour. I had a meeting with Diane at 9. Diane had pulled the probate file by the time I arrived. There was a formal will, she said, sliding a document across the desk. Filed 11 years ago. Amended once, 2 years before her death. The amendment matters here. I looked through the pages. My grandmother's will, probated 3 years prior, listed several specific items. Jewelry to named family members, a modest bequest to her church, personal effects split between my father and his sister, and, in unambiguous legal language, the duplex at the Forest Street address to be transferred in full upon my death to my granddaughter, Renee Marie Castellano. The duplex, I said. Currently assessed at $540,000, Diane said, reflecting the appreciation in that neighborhood over the past several years. My father told me it was sold. It was not sold, Diane said. County records show it transferred into your father and stepmother's joint names 14 months after your grandmother's death via a quitclaim deed executed by the estate's executor. Who was the executor? She held my gaze. Your father. The room was quiet. He transferred my inheritance into a joint account with Carol, I said. He transferred a specifically bequeathed property, while legally obligated as executor to protect your interest in the estate, into joint ownership with his current wife, without your knowledge. He then told you it had been sold for medical expenses. She paused. And it appears the family may currently be planning to use proceeds connected to that asset or its rental income as part of financing your stepbrother's degree, with your name attached as a contributor without your consent. I thought about the duplex, about my grandmother walking me past it as a child, talking about fixing it up for the future. The future had been me, the whole time. And the investment account? I said. The annotations alone aren't conclusive, Diane said, but combined with the timeline and her declining health in her final years, which her medical records will confirm or deny, it builds a strong picture. She paused. Several of the larger withdrawals cluster in an 18-month window where her physician's notes, if they match what I'd expect, will likely show meaningful cognitive decline. She was sick toward the end, I said. I knew that. I didn't know what it meant for the account. Yes, Diane said. I sat with that. What do we do? I said. First, the loan misrepresentation. Your name was submitted to a financial institution and an academic institution without your authorization, and that's actionable immediately, separate from the estate. Second, we challenge the duplex transfer. Third, the investment account. She looked at me. Before any of that, I want you at whatever event they invite you to next. There usually is one. Why would I go? Because they'll need you cooperative a little longer until the financing closes, she said. Go. Stay calm. Bring documentation. What documentation? She slid a folder across the desk. The financial aid office confirmation, the bank reference, the duplex probate record. These, she said, and whatever else turns up. She looked at me over her glasses. Quiet or correct? I thought about 26 people. My father's hand on my arm. Don't bother calling. Correct, I said. Good, said Diane. The invitation came 5 days later. A text from Carol. We're doing a small family dinner before Tyler leaves for orientation. We really want you there, Renee. We're still family no matter what. The warmth in that message was architectural, constructed, load-bearing, built to produce one specific response. I had spent 17 years inside architecture exactly like it. I texted back, I'll be there. The dinner was at my father and Carol's house, the same dining room where I'd grown up after 12. The same table. I arrived 8 minutes early, calm, with a folder under my arm. The specific composure of someone who has prepared and has nothing to hide. My father, Carol, Tyler, and Brianna were already at the table when I walked in. Tyler had a celebratory energy about him. He'd be leaving for Philadelphia in 9 days, and the table had clearly been set up to mark the occasion. Carol's phone buzzed partway through dinner. She glanced at it, then looked at me. "That's actually the financial aid office," she said, with mild surprise. "They want to finalize the contributor paperwork this week. Renee, can we just get your information sorted tonight so it's done before Tyler leaves?" "No," I said. "You can't." The table went quiet. I opened the folder and set it beside the breadbasket. The financial aid confirmation listing my name, the bank's flagged co-applicant reference. None of it bearing my signature. None of it reflecting any communication I had ever had with either institution. "My name has been submitted to Wharton's financial aid office and possibly to a bank as a confirmed contributor and co-applicant," I said. To the table generally, in the voice I use at work when precision matters most. I never agreed to this. I never signed anything. If either institution proceeds with my name attached, my attorney will be formally notifying both of the misrepresentation. The word attorney moved through the room, the way cold air moves through a door someone forgot to shut. Brianna's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. My father's expression shifted from confused to something harder. "You brought a lawyer into this conversation," my father said. His voice was doing the work his composure no longer could. "You put my name on financial documents I never signed," I said. I placed the second item on the table. A single page, the probate record, the Forest Street bequest, my name in clear legal language, 3 years old. "I'd like to talk about the duplex," I said. Tyler's face changed first, not gradual discomfort. The immediate stillness of someone realizing something he'd been told was resolved had just resurfaced in the worst possible room. 9 days before he was supposed to leave for the program it was funding. My father and Carol's eyes met. A full exchange in under 2 seconds. The look of two people whose plan had just hit something they hadn't accounted for. "This has nothing to do with your grandmother," my father said. Too fast. "My grandmother left that duplex to me 4 years before she died," I said. "I have the probate record right here." Carol stood up. "Renee, this is not the time." "You made it the time," I said. "The moment you told the financial aid office I was confirmed." My father reached for my arm. I stepped back, out of reach. Not dramatically, simply outside the range where it could happen. "All communication on this goes through my attorney," I said. "Her information is on the back of that page." I picked up my folder and walked toward the front door. "Renee," my father's voice. The performance had drained out of it, replaced by something more honest than anything he'd said at his birthday. "You walk out of here over this. We're done." I stopped at the door. "You were already done with me the night you said letting you stay," I said. "I'm just the one who finally heard it." And I walked out into the cool evening, folder under my arm, and sat in my car for several minutes, breathing deliberately before I drove straight to Diane's office, even though it was almost 9 at night, because she'd told me to call the second anything happened. Diane filed the institutional misrepresentation notice that Monday, and the estate challenge 3 weeks later. I want to describe what that looked like from the outside, because the inside of any legal process is documents and waiting, not the dramatic scenes people imagine. The outside looked like this. Wharton's financial aid office, upon receiving Diane's formal letter, immediately removed me as a confirmed contributor and flagged Tyler's file for a financing review, since a meaningful portion of his proposed funding plan had relied on a contribution that did not exist. Tyler's enrollment wasn't canceled, but his financing fell short, and he deferred his start date by 1 full year while the family scrambled for alternatives. The bank's flagged co-applicant reference was formally withdrawn once Diane's letter arrived, and the loan officer noted, in writing, that the application would need to be resubmitted entirely without my name attached. The estate challenge moved through probate court at its own pace. The quitclaim deed, executed by my father as executor, transferring my grandmother's duplex into joint ownership with Carol, sat at the center of everything. Diane brought in a probate litigation specialist, a woman named Dr. Helena Marsh, 24 years in contested estates, who reviewed the full file and delivered her assessment plainly, a clear breach of fiduciary duty. There were also the brokerage statements, the annotated withdrawals in my grandmother's hand, medical records confirming the cognitive decline that lined up almost exactly with the largest withdrawals. The specific correlation between one withdrawal and Tyler's car, which had been parked in my father and Carol's driveway for 6 years. It wasn't a clean case. It was the kind of case real litigation is actually built from. Layered, partly circumstantial, requiring careful argument to connect documents that don't explain themselves. Diane is very good at that kind of argument. The case settled 4 months after she filed. I wasn't in the room for the settlement. Diane was. She called me afterward with the specific professional satisfaction of someone delivering a result she considers fair. The duplex transferred to me, full title, Current value approximately $555,000, having appreciated slightly during the proceedings. A cash payment representing the withdrawn investment funds, plus interest calculated from the date of the final unauthorized withdrawal. And a written acknowledgement, signed by my father, signed by Carol, that Renee Marie Castellano owed nothing to the family in connection with Tyler's education or any other family financial matter, had never authorized her name or information to be used in any financial or institutional submission, and had made no promise of contribution relied upon by any party. Their version of events, written down, signed, beneath the truth. Diane emailed me the final copy on a Friday afternoon. I read it at my desk in Denver, in the apartment that had always, fully, been mine. I read the acknowledgement twice. Owed nothing. Never authorized. Made no promise. Not an apology. I understood that and hadn't expected one. Apologies require an internal reckoning that takes far longer than a settlement and sometimes never comes at all. What the acknowledgement was instead was harder to produce and more durable than any apology. A signed, filed witness document. Their version of reality had to sit down and put its name beneath what was actually true. That was the only apology that was ever going to matter. I went to the Forest Street duplex in September. Drove over alone on a Saturday afternoon, parked outside the building I now legally owned, the one my grandmother had walked me past as a kid, talking about fixing it up for the future without telling me yet what that meant. The tenants were still in place. A young couple in the upper unit, an older man who'd lived in the lower unit for over a decade, according to the lease files Diane had forwarded. I didn't go inside. I just stood across the street for a while, looking at it. I thought about my grandmother, about a woman who had looked at a 12-year-old who had just lost her mother and decided, immediately and permanently, that the girl mattered completely, and who had spent the rest of her life quietly building a structure to make sure that mattering survived her. It had almost not survived. It survived. My father and Carol have tried reaching me through relatives twice since the settlement. I've responded each time through Diane's office, because that was the arrangement, and arrangements made for good reasons don't stop being good reasons just because they're inconvenient. Tyler texted me once, about 2 months after he started his deferred program. I didn't know about the duplex stuff until way after. I should have asked more questions about where the money was supposed to come from. I'm sorry. I sat with that for a couple of days. Then I wrote back. I believe you. That's where things sit. Not a resolution, a position. A point on a map that isn't where I started and isn't, if there even is one, the final destination. I've been seeing my therapist, Dr. Naomi Greenwald, 15 years in practice focused on blended family dynamics, since August, and we've been working through what I actually want, what's realistic, and what is simply the wish that things had gone differently, a wish you're allowed to hold on to and still keep moving forward, as long as you're honest with yourself about which one it is.